Hello and welcome to this short introduction. My name is Poul Kattler and I will tell you a little bit about why airplanes are so much worse than trains in relation to the climate. I'm coming from the small NGO in Denmark called Council for Sustainable Transport. So, CO2 emissions for passenger transportation is calculated in CO2 grams per person kilometers. In 2013, it was like this according to the European Environment Agency, 17 grams for trains and 286 grams for aeroplanes on average. So it means some trains are running better than this and some are worse, some airplanes better, some are worse. It's an average. So is it likely to change according to the technological development? No, it's not very likely. Each aeroplane has emitted almost the same amount of CO2 since the year 2000 up to now. Well, can it be stopped, you may say? The Organization for Civil Aviation is actually right now working for a voluntary limitation to growth of emissions starting from 2021. But it's really unsure whether this voluntary agreement will come into effect. Airplane technology seems not to be too green. It's going to be a fossil industry also in 2050. But trains, they can actually go on 100% renewable energy. It will do it very soon, at least on the main lines around in Europe. So obviously, this is a wrong direction we are observing at the moment, and actually also according to the European politicians. Back in 2011, the European Commission in their White Book wrote that in 2050 there shall run no airplanes in Europe on fossil fuels. Well, that was one thing is ambitions, the other thing is reality, because the increase in European air traffic from 2012 to 2050 with no interventions will be 270%. That's an average. In the northern part of Europe, even more. So there is really a gap between what is the political intentions and what is happening on the ground. So what about these emissions from the aeroplane and the climate change? Unfortunately, airplanes are causing, so much more harm than just the CO2, because in the height where the aeroplanes are flying, much more stuff is emitted. Methane, ozone, and other gases. And up there in the sky, airstripes and contribution to high clouds add to climate effects. So scientists, they say that in a 20 years horizon, CO2 shall be multiplied by somewhere between 2 and 4 to give the real negative influence to the climate. We call it a climate accelerator. So the real difference to climate in pure CO2, the relation is 1 to 17. What was said with a climate accelerator on 3, the difference between trains and airplanes is 1 to 50. This means that you can travel between London and Paris 50 times on train to disturb the climate as much as by 1 time on plane. Wow. So is flying a human right? I may say not. Well, my favorite example is with the night trains versus the airlines. Night trains are struggling these years to survive. But why are trains about to lose, and why is it so terrible wrong? Well, the European Commission, they talk so much about competition, free market, and think that the free market and the free competition is going to make so many good things in the economy. Well, not in this area with trains versus planes. Long distance trains, they are not subsidized. Well, you may have heard about subsidized regional trains, subsidized urban trains, sure, but for in the general rule, long distance trains not subsidized. They pay infrastructure fees every kilometer. They pay fuel taxes, including green taxes, even though they run on green electricity many places around in Europe. And in Germany they pay VAT, which they also do to some extension in other countries. Well, that's not for the planes. They pay small infrastructure fees in the airports, and what you don't know is that many airports are heavily subsidized by public funding. They don't pay fuel and green taxes, and no VAT goes on top of it. So actually Europe is subsidizing air traffic. It's calculated to be 61 euro per each and every travel in Europe. Do you wonder why train traffic is having such a hard time? Why are closures of night trains so special painful to Scandinavian countries, you may ask? Well, Oslo, Stockholm and Copenhagen are so far away from the European high-speed network which run daytime trains. We are too far away, and the night train from Copenhagen was, up to the day of closure in 2014, very popular among Scandinavians. By the closure, it left 185,000 journeys to and from Denmark without any means of transportation. According to a survey made by DB in 2013, a 3/4 of the passengers are left into the sky to the airplanes. Why is it important? It is important because we are left with no alternatives. Well, the trains did not take a very large share of international traffic, but honestly, it is symbolic. Now we are left with nothing. So, what can we do about it? Activism is really one of the issues. We can make sure that the general public and the politicians know about that we are still protesting, like here in Copenhagen, where Danish television is recording a flash mob at the main railway station an early morning in June 16. A few days later, activists were on the platforms in Malmö, and they were also on the platforms in Zurich, as we have been on the platforms since the major closures of night trains 1.5 years ago. The travelers are not satisfied with the railway company's closure of night trains, and we are still going to fight. Here, to your information, some of my sources, and this is some information sheet to contact me.